Leela Vanan, 1950 to 2017, was the queen of Brokdong, a Belizean icon, musician, performer, and social activist whom Belize's National Institute of History and Culture, NICH, recognized as a national hero in 2016. Vanan was a strong advocate for Belizean Creole culture and believed it was essential to promote it. After recognizing a waning appreciation for Creole folkways, Vanan was moved to do something about the need of the Creole people and to find a way to immortalize their songs, culture, food and way of life. Mejia 54. She co-founded the first Creole Council of Belize in 1990 at her home in Punta Gorda town. This organization later evolved into the National Creole Council in 1995, where she served as vice president. Thus, it is no wonder her 1991 hit, Creole Culture, became her most famous song. Vanan also founded the Ibilites dance troupe, which has taught Belizean children traditional Creole dances for over 30 years because she had a story to tell and a mission to accomplish, starting with the children. Mejia 54. With the Ibilites dance troupe, Vanan toured the world and had great success, particularly in Europe, where she hosted and choreographed at least 70 shows. Throughout her lifelong music career, which began when she debuted at 7 in the Brokdong band Old Pell, Vanan won several awards in Belize, including the Outstanding Brokdong Master Award, Song of the Year, Brokdong Artist of the Year, Woman Entertainer of the Year, Woman of the Year in Culture Award, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and a Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for her tireless support of the Creole culture and her social activism. In 2021, in celebration of the nation's 40th independence anniversary, the Belizean government introduced the Leela Vanan Prize for Creative Communication and Safeguarding Cultural Heritage, which speaks to the impact of her life's legacy. Leela Vanan was a true inspiration and left a lasting impact on Belizean culture. Vanan's goals and achievements are remarkably similar to those of another Caribbean cultural icon, the poet, thespian, folklorist and cultural preservationist Louise Bennett Cavalli, 1919 to 2006. Although their lives and work spanned different decades, the historical background of the Caribbean in the 20th century involving mass decolonization movements cannot be ignored in reference to their endeavors. Rodriguez 124. Wearsoli argues that Bennett purposefully undertook a very nationalist agenda as preserver and transmitter of Jamaica's cultural traditions, 35, which is identical to Vanan's efforts regarding Creole culture. Based on folkloric research, Bennett recorded numerous albums and performances such as Jamaica Singing Games, 1953, Jamaican Folk Songs, 1954, Children's Jamaican Songs and Games, 1957, Miss Lou's Views, 1962, Listen to Louise, 1968, The Honorable Miss Lou, 1980, Yes Dear Miss Lou Live, 1983, and Lord the Rhythm Suite, 1999, Wearsoli 36. Aside from her original works, Bennett also contributed additional dialogue, wrote music, wrote lyrics, or adapted folk songs for numerous productions. Morris 91. Rodriguez writes, in keeping with the creation of a national language, these writings' wit and sarcasm explore social and political issues facing the nation and the surrounding area. 124. Furthermore, Bennett's children's television series Ring Ding, 1968 to 1980, also overlaps with the founding purpose of Vanan's Ibilites dance troupe because Bennett's endeavors were aimed at executing a deliberate nationalist campaign to ensure that young Jamaicans would be cognizant of their cultural heritage and that the succeeding generation would be ingrained with a strong sense of national identity. Wearsoli 37. For instance, in Lord the Rhythm Suite, Bennett repeats the following phrase quite often: it was important, that they learn about the things that belong to them, QTD. In Wearsoli 39. Morris also describes her performances as typically consciousness-raising sessions, extolling Jamaican language and culture. 70. In recognizing her contributions to Jamaica's cultural preservation, musicologist Wiley speaks of the debt of gratitude owed to Bennett by many researchers, both local and foreign, with whom she has shared her collections, insights, informants, and to whom she has generously given cues and clues. QTD. In Morris 55. Morris goes on to highlight Bennett's lecture demonstrations on such topics as moods in Jamaican folk music and African heritage in Jamaican culture, calling her a mine of information on things Jamaican, such as Tukumina, Jankano, Dinky Mini, Anansi stories, Gara, Mayal, quadrille and roster drumming. 55. The effect of Bennett's work on Belizean society and Brokdong requires further research, but there are similarities between the lyrics and tunes of many of the Mento songs she popularized in Belizean Brokdong.
Now we're going to the Mento. You know the Mento? 6 hand, 7 hand, 8 hand bunch. Did I light a me walk go home?
It's up every morning, let's go to work from day till night. I got 7 big feet and one on the way. Got the weather that's always in need. What a beautiful day.
For example, both Day Dolight and Good Morning Belize from the King of Brokdong, Wilfred Peters, 1931 to 2010, speak of wanting to go home after working through the night until morning. Both songs also feature counting, except Peters counts children instead of hands of bananas. Additionally, Walk Good and A Freetown Girl partially share a tune.
Walk good on your way and good Duffy walk with you. Walk good every day and good Duffy walk with you. Walk good.
These commonalities could be based on a shared history, as many folk songs from the Caribbean, including Mento and Brokdong, blend African and European rhythms and lyrics.
You know, in Jamaica, we make up the new and topical words to old folk tunes all the time. Whatever is topical, we would put them to an old folk tune. Now, that is what we call the Mento.
Tomlinson also explains that the Jamaican work song tradition extended beyond the nation's borders as workers traveled to other places in the region. 9. As Jamaicans migrated throughout the diaspora, their work songs would transform, absorbing new experiences and reflecting the new realities and local environments. This transformation signals a Jamaican cultural link to a place of origin, stressing the importance of understanding this past in order to thrive in a new land. Tomlinson 20. Nonetheless, that place of origin is arguably not Jamaica but Africa.
The thing is, those people who came through Jamaica to here, they brought that from Africa. From which, when they came through, forced through the gates of Sierra Leone there, and if they stopped in Jamaica and then came here after, or came straight here and administered by Jamaica, it's still African origin.
Whatever you like to call them in the different islands. There were a fair number of the aspirations of the people.
This one, the Drive Where the Houses, of course, it speaks for itself, so I'll just go right into it. The chorus starts. Drive where the houses do not worth a cent, and yet we have to pay so much for rent. One Monday morning, a landlord went to a tenant to get his rent. But the tenant said, "Massa, me no fool, me not pay no rent for no swimming pool."
Brokdong music denotes a kind of dance and song reflecting usual and unusual events in the life of the common Belizean, Olson and Sheehy 677. Brokdong sometimes carries political messages reflecting the journey of enslaved Africans into the mahogany camps of Belize and the resulting culture of survival, Belizean Creole culture. It uses syncopated rhythms and responsorial patterns firmly rooted in Africa, diatonic harmonics borrowed from Europe, and lyrical themes colored with the Belizean Creole language and experience, Olson and Sheehy 677-8.
It's a long time when I hear from you, sweet Africa. It's a long time when I hear from you, mama.
Brokdong is often full of double entendres and satire, with the singer occupying the role of storyteller, one who typically bears scandalous news. Likewise, Roma notes that while Mento lyrics comprise political commentary and subjects of everyday life, a disproportionately large number of the songs are body songs. Therefore, Olson and Sheehy concluded that the role of Brokdong's musical style links it clearly with the Jamaican Mento and Trinidadian Calypso, Olson and Sheehy 678. Vernon specialized in guru, a rare style of Brokdong originating from Belize's southern regions characterized by its fast rhythm, use of the gong drum, and brass and wind instruments. Vernon's maternal grandfather was a Jamaican migrant working for the United Fruit Company who settled in British Honduras, now Belize, in 1897. It is unclear what influence he may have had on her music, as Vernon cites her paternal grandmother as her teacher, who was descended from Jemima Haranaya Hausa, a woman from Sierra Leone who escaped slavery in Mexico and fled to British Honduras, Menjiva and Carolina 520. Nevertheless, both Bennett and Vernon cite African rhythms as the basis of their works.
You hear that? What you think I do? It's rhythm in my giving. Yes, that is our thing, man. Rhythm. But my aunt wrote to say, when the Asian culture and the European culture broke upon African culture in the Caribbean people, we stir them up and blend them to the flavor. We shake them up and move them to the beat. We wheel them and we turn them and we rock them and we sound them and we temper them and laugh. So we can saltfish gone up, mackerel gone up, beef and pork gone up same way. And when rice and butter ready, then just go up and holiday.
Bennett reprised many Mento tunes and, according to Vasquez, dons a Mento aesthetic that relies on diasporic trickster strategies, including sexuality, laughter, and clever wordplay throughout her works. 1. As one of the pioneers of dub poetry, Bennett wrote entirely in Jamaican patois and drew on other forms of African-Jamaican orality, such as riddles and Anansi stories, to explore Afro-Indigenous culture from a female perspective. Tomlinson 107.
Really having a fine time.
I started with peace and protest music. And then I went into the folkloric music like the Brokdong, you know. Because I noticed something with the Brokdong, it was, getting scarce and people were doing other kind of music. And for me, I like my culture so much, so I say I better continue with it with the late Mr. Peters,
Similarly, as a storyteller, Vernon adopted African rhythms and Belizean Creole language for her peace and protest music. Furthermore, in her reprisals of Belizean folk songs, Vernon utilizes sexuality, humor, and wit to retell and critique Belizean experiences in what can be described as a Brokdong aesthetic. Through their aesthetics, use of nation language, and political and sexual themes, a clear African link between Mento and Brokdong and Bennett and Vernon speaks to African survival strategies in the colonial space. One of Bennett's works that shows women's survival strategies in the Jamaican landscape is her rendition of the folk song Under the Coconut Tree on the album Jamaican Folk Songs.
Under the coconut tree, darling, you promised to marry to me, darling, it was under the coconut tree.
It was under the coconut tree, darling. It was there that you gave it to me, darling. It was there.
The song's title on the album is spelled with the word coconut, not coconut, as it is often spelled elsewhere. As Shalene Vasquez explains, double meanings and wordplay are typical of Mento 19. Therefore, coconut can be a play on words for genitalia and evoke the double meaning because coco, the brown root vegetable with a hair-like exterior, gave rise to the slang term coco for vulva in some Caribbean countries, including Jamaica and Belize. Moreover, as the part of many plants that contains the seed, the word nut carries a similar connotation as another word for testicle or ejaculation. Additionally, the tonal shifts in how under and darling are sung create dual meanings. Under is drawn out by both singers, however, the man performing this duet on the track sings the word evenly, whereas Bennett's tone rises at the end of the word, creating a sorrowful sound. Her shrill timbre is also reminiscent of anger because of the stressed R sound. The stressed and unstressed ways these singers sing the words signify not only a woman being under a man as may happen during intercourse, but also women being under men in a patriarchal society where premarital sex often has dire consequences for women but often bolsters men's egos. Therefore, Bennett's rendition of the song exposes the under, highlighting what is unclear in the shades of the coconut trees. Inversely, Bennett sings darling evenly, evoking complete sincerity, whereas the man chuckles when he sings darling. Vasquez suggests that the repetition of the term darling emphasizes the romantic union and perhaps even the desperation of the speaker who reminds the lover of her duties. 15. The man also stresses the word heart, thereby underscoring that more than feelings have been exchanged, which is reinforced when Bennett sings, "It was there you took my heart from me, darling." Curiously, heart is sung on the second line, not the third, as in the previous stanza. Instead, this line parallels, "It was there that you gave it to me, darling." Vasquez further notes that the ambiguous pronoun it alludes to unidentified sensual engagements, which give way to an identifiable promise of marriage later in the song. 15. Thus, by singing about it before he sings about the heart, the man diminishes the importance of her feelings and his promise of marriage. For the woman, it was her heart; for the man, it was simply it, a mere thing he could giggle about. Therefore, these discrepancies in the duets that are otherwise parallel mark the difference in the value of sex between genders, a difference embedded in culture. Speaking of that value, the song's last stanza also leaves listeners with ambiguity because the duo repeats, "Let's go under the coconut tree, darling," 4 times. Vasquez contends that the motif of the coconut tree represents the Caribbean landscape and unites with Victorian propriety in the promise of wedlock. 15. The repetition of this final line indicates a reoccurrence of the lover's tryst, but listeners do not know if he will marry her. Their union is like a bargain where the woman wagers sex, hoping it will convince him to marry her, whereas he wagers a promise of marriage to persuade her to have sex with him again. Of course, one side bargains more dangerously than the other, as the woman has a lot more to lose in Jamaican society, and that may precisely be the point. Consequently, the song could be interpreted as a cautionary tale that reflects Victorian propriety, aligning with Anita Patterson's argument that, instead of affirming the free-loving practices of working women and the distinctly Jamaican, peasant folk attitudes toward women's pleasure encoded in the notion of village reputation, the first Jamaican women poets seem instead to have embraced bourgeois European ideas of respectability and virtue. 268 QTD. In Vasquez 5. Nevertheless, the last stanza is initiated by Bennett, and the man joins in, which could mean that her character has decided to use slackness to sweeten the deal. In the chapter Slackness Hiding from Culture, from her book Noises in the Blood, Caroline Cooper defines slackness as follows. In its invariant coupling with culture, slackness is potentially a politics of subversion. For slackness is not mere sexual looseness, though it certainly is that. Slackness is a metaphorical revolt against law and order, an undermining of consensual standards of decency. It is the antithesis of culture. 141. Therefore, Bennett's confident lead in the last stanza suggests a reversal of roles and an intention to have the man fulfill his promise. Perhaps the man will be convinced to marry her after another demonstration of her skills under the coconut tree. Thus, rather than being a condemnation of slackness, Bennett's rendition could encourage women's assertiveness when using sex to achieve a goal, especially when the goal is marriage, because many women had to rely on marriage as the main source of livelihood. A similar point can be drawn from Vernon's Brokdong rendition of the Belizean folk song, Coming Down from Fort. The song is about young women engaging in sexual activities on Baron Bliss' grave at the Seaside Lighthouse in Fort George, an area of Belize City. Baron Bliss was a British philanthropist who died in Belize on March 9, 1926, leaving his fortune in trust for Belize's development. Since his passing, Belize has celebrated March 9 as Baron Bliss Day, which was eventually renamed National Heroes and Benefactors Day in 2008. It is unclear when his gravesite became a romantic rendezvous site for young unmarried couples, but anecdotal evidence suggests that couples have been meeting there secretly since as early as the 1930s. Squires. The lighthouse at Bliss Tomb is like the coconut tree in the aforementioned Jamaican folk song. The lighthouse is secluded as it does not abut any houses, and behind it faces the sea. The surrounding sea wall provides privacy from any boats on the water. Therefore, Baron Bliss' gravesite is an isolated area where people can be intimate in relative privacy. Like Bennett, Vernon sings a song that exposes secret love affairs. However, in Vernon's version of the song, she makes notable additions and changes.
Coming down from foot, when you see the young girl coming down from foot, now what I'm gonna do? Bump around this grave. Now what I'm gonna do? Bump around this grave. Better than they walk, better than they talk, better than they read one book right in at the park. Better than the Bible, better off it too. Now what I'm gonna do? Bump around this grave. Now what I'm gonna do? Bump around this grave. Then ladies, no need to go there again. Better place to go. Nice place. Place safe. No green grass for
For example, she changes the lines "Den me di wap pan Baron Bliss grave" / "Den me di amf pan the old man grave" into the question "Da we den me di do wap pan Baron Bliss grave." Thus, Vernon captures not only the community's observation of these activities but also its interrogation of women instead of men, who in Belize are praised for sexual prowess, aligning with what is locally dubbed machismo ideology, involving a strong masculine pride. The term "wap" in Belizean Creole has many meanings, including but not limited to whip, extremely good, stink, scam, or to put something over on one. Herrera et al. 366-7. The vagueness of the word's meaning matches the song scenario because Vernon introduces ambiguity into what was once a conclusive statement. Her change reintroduces, albeit thinly, a protection of women's right to their secrets. The women are feeling the proverbial wap of society while at the same time trying to put a wap on their interrogators. Although they are exposed through the absurdity of their excuses, such as trying to read the Bible in the dark, their attempts at cunning align with Cooper's analysis of the proverbial cunning of the Jamaican woman as a manifestation of the morally ambiguous craftiness of Anansi. 47. Cooper notes that across the African diaspora, folktales of the clever Anansi prevailing over the powerful abound as part of ancestral memories of sabotage and moronage, systemic resistance to servitude. 48. In her comedic undressing of the young women coming from Baron Bliss' grave with their frock boss up the back / bautan crossway / grass inner den hair, Vernon embodies an Anansi-like persona. During the instrumental, she advises the women in the audience that there is no need to go there again and that there are better places to carry out one's business. Therefore, Vernon recognizes covert sexual meetings as a need, thereby suggesting not that premarital sex should not take place but rather that there are better places to do it than a green grass hotel. As Vernon take bad thing make joke, she uses comedy to convey a survival strategy to young women, subverting a common practice which seems antithetical to the Christian values of the society while at the same time covertly conveying a better strategy that women can adopt to evade society's condemnation. Perhaps there is something to be said about defiling the grave of a European nobleman because his contribution to Belize's wealth is tainted by the history of the colonial history that built up that wealth over generations. However, that is not the subject of Vernon's subversion. Vernon adds excuses the young women come up with for what they were doing at Baron Bliss' grave through call and response and pokes fun at them, which is unique to Vernon's version. However, Vernon does not condemn these women or the acts taking place at the lighthouse. Instead, she recommends the Ramada Princess Hotel as an alternative setting for these WAPs because it is on the same stretch of road as the Baron Bliss Lighthouse, and it is a casino, restaurant, bowling alley, theater and hotel. Thus, any alibis constructed when leaving that hotel would be more reasonable than leaving Baron Bliss' grave in a disheveled state. Vernon subtly conveys that if women are going to lie to survive in society, then their lies need to be plausible and match the setting and their appearances. According to Brockman, in response to women's greater economic dependence on their husbands, Belizean women responded by greater use of sexuality and more production of children to influence their men. 504. Perhaps recognizing sex as the necessary business of financial security or merely freedom, Vernon resists ideas of purity as a requirement for respectable femininity from Christianity imposed by colonization. Instead, Vernon suggests that women's respectability is a matter of discreet cunning in a society that leaves them with little privacy and options.
And it comes from a decent African language called Tree. TWI.
Bennett and Vernon also preserve and promote their respective cultures through their performances Mento and Brokdong aesthetics. Bennett's literary contributions go beyond mere linguistic expression, they are a resounding affirmation of cultural identity by celebrating nation language. Bennett's monologue, Jamaica Language, is an apt example. Attired in the madras fabric, originating from India but based on Scottish tartan designs, which forms the basis of many national costumes in the Caribbean, Kirkland, Bennett positions herself as an authority on Jamaican culture and its colonial history from the outset of her performance. Her style is part and parcel of the identity she embodies and projects, which cannot be extradited from its colonial history. Throughout her performance of the monologue from her series Auntie Rochi Say, Bennett displays an innovative use of oral folk traditions while getting her message across, using call and response, impersonations, clever wordplay, and accented inflections and repetitions on the last beat of her lines, much like a Mento rhythm. In Jamaica Language, Bennett refutes negative perceptions of Jamaican Creole that consider it a mere corruption of English, thereby underscoring the need for language preservation to promote cultural identity. As Wearsoli observes, Bennett heroically insisted on writing in the language of the Jamaican masses, undeterred by the criticism and dismissal from her class. This dedication reflects her commitment to proving the worth of the Jamaican language, 47-49. Like the rest of Bennett's works, Jamaica Language is entirely in Jamaican Creole, except when English is quoted for comedic effect. Miss Liu's deliberate choice to write in Jamaican language, as highlighted by Wearsoli, 35, enabled her to directly represent experiences without compromising nuanced meanings that often get lost in translation. For example, the monologue mocks a girl who tries to sing folk songs in English. Thus, Bennett inverts English and Jamaican language, positioning English as the corruption that spoiled the Jamaican culture. Citing the figure of Auntie Rochi, an alter ego she embodies as the authority on Jamaican culture, history, politics, and society, Bennett acknowledges that the Jamaican language adapted and evolved from English. However, she stresses that the language is not merely a linguistic variation. Instead, she reframes patois as a disguise that, on the one hand, seems to be following colonial hegemony but, on the other hand, subverts that power by making the language unrecognizable to English speakers when it suits Jamaican speakers. She calls this trickery a pop, which is similar to the Belizean WAP, and this pop gives back power to Jamaica's people by repositioning them as Anansi-like figures who outwitted their enslavers. The survival lessons here are to resist and laugh about colonial injustice, allowing Jamaicans to transcend life's hardships even in moments of pain. Wearsoli 49. Moreover, Bennett defends the Jamaican language by emphasizing its tree origins, unique vocabulary, and how its sounds express meaning. In his introduction to Bennett's Auntie Rochi Say collection, Morris praises her explicit defense of the dignity and autonomy of Jamaican Creole. 7. This defense resonates with Brathwaite's assertion that nation language, influenced strongly by the African model, is not merely a linguistic variation of English but a distinct entity with its own contours, rhythm, and timbre. 282. For example, she stresses the hard consonant sounds in rukuruku and buguyaga to indicate their negative meanings. However, she stresses the long vowel sound of bunununus in a cooing tone to signify its pleasant meaning. Bennett's vocal manipulation and range of sound in her voice are, as noted by Rolla, comparable to the prowess of a blues or calypso singer, QTD. In Morris 130-1. Consequently, her performance echoes Brathwaite's argument that culture exists in the spoken word, with noise being integral to meaning. 283. Furthermore, Bennett points out the hypocrisy of discourses that consider English a language but patois a corruption, as English is derived from several languages. Therefore, Bennett challenges the notion of linguistic inferiority and asserts the importance of language in affirming cultural identity. Bennett's works take pride in nation language and instill that pride in all patois speakers who otherwise may continue to feel like their language is improper, bad English.
Rhythm, hey, balance,
Auntie Rochi's boiling temper is matched by Vernon in her most famous song, Creole Culture. Her sharp, questioning tone reveals outrage and exacerbation at the discouraging notions that Creoles have no culture, history, identity, language, or pride. Her repetition of Awan Noahu Sh Creole no Gie interrogates these false ideologies and validates the wealth of Creole culture. According to Ads, Vernon's song significantly contributed to shifting attitudes towards the Creole language in society because music can deliver messages in ways that transcend speech.
The hardest people to convince that will Creole a language that the Creole speaker itself.
How important is Creole in preserving Belize's cultural identity, particularly in the context of figures like Leela Vernon?
100% critical. In fact, Leela Vernon, I might focus on our standard spelling system, right? Mm-hmm. As long as you can interpret symbols in a standard way, as long as you know which symbol. So when Leela came up with her song, Awano, who said Creole no got no culture, that became an anthem. So okay, how I want to point out and Creole language, who want to point out Creole that one language, Creole that is, Creole that this and that. When they sing it, there's something about song will touch people. Music will could bring people one message. So that power of the genre of music in general. And then every time Leela perform, she always went into like, her songs are like historical account. And then when she was creating I want to know who's a Creole Nagano culture, me, she and Myrna now passed to me sit down on Myrna kitchen table. And so this song now, Leela when he write it, same time the language thing they push. And she never had much time for worry about standard symbol, and so she just says, translate, write it for me, but this is how we forgot. And the thing is, when she was doing that, she said, you know what? Make her put in one paragraph about language or verse.
I want to know who said Creole no got no language. I want to know that who did try get me discouraged. When the slave master me got the woman slave in a bondage, this whole thing me end up in a marriage.
Vanan's incorporation of African lineages from the Nango, Zulu, Igbo, Ashanti, and Mandingo is reflected in her lyrics, instruments like the gom drums, and in her attire inspired by those worn by enslaved women working in the enslavers' houses.
But in beating the drum, that was something that, you know, women normally, you would see women to do. And also in not caring that people want her dress, you know, her style of showing, bringing the history with me, even if part of the history is so ugly. Also, a couple people are like, why Leela dressing the house and slave? They used to dress in and it's looking drunk, gone, right? And she would do it, and she said, my grandmother had these gowns, she said, and we no more shame at it. We no more shame at it. We just can't park at that gown, the whole white man may dress, so we must shame at it. Because all of that is who we are. So that I mean one thing, like she never had a hatred in her. Alright, this lick don't catch it, how we are moving on from here.
As Ads explains, Vanan played the drums, typically reserved for men, and fashioned her outfits based on a style passed down through Vanan's family and worn by her grandmother. She took pride in her clothing to consolidate her Creole identity. Like Bennett's Madras from India, which signifies England's global colonial influence, Vanan's use of corsets, bustles, ruffles and pleats on her costume and her invasion into male spaces show a reclaiming of black women's bodies that have historically been exploited and stripped of autonomy. Vanan's work has thus influenced other Belizean female artists to challenge male-dominated spaces and to do so in Creole.
What she did, as we have seen through Ernestine, what it has done is she so influenced female artists. Not only to give it all I have, but to give it in Creole.
Like Bennett's emphasis on the Twi influences on Jamaican Creole, Vanan elaborates on Creole's historical African roots. Ironically, there is a common misconception that Belizean Creole is a dialect of Jamaican Creole. However, citing Hubert Devenish of the Jamaican Language Unit at the University of the West Indies, Mona, and her expertise as one of the co-authors of Belize Creole, English Dictionary English, Creole Dictionary, Ads suggests that both languages are derived from African origins. Vanan's decision to rhyme language with discourage positions linguistic recognition as a primary challenge in preserving Creole culture. In this verse about language, she also hints at the historical injustices meted out to Creole people and sums up the language as marriage between conflicting identities that make it difficult to reconcile in people who, often through miscegenation, are culturally and genetically comprised of European and African descent. Nevertheless, Vanan reframes this history as bondage emerging in a marriage. This powerful metaphor establishes Belize's Creole culture as its own family of being that speaks to its people's ability to adapt, survive, and thrive.
I can remember when I was doing all my research into Jamaican folklore, I said to one old gentleman I'm talking to, you know, and I said to him, what you call all the songs? He says, every Jamaica folk song is a Mento. Every Jamaica folk song is a Mento. We sing Mento. So I say, where we get the Mento from? He said, we grow it.
Overall, both Bennett and Vanan utilized the aesthetics of Mento and Brokdong, drawing on African rhythms and linguistic influences. Through their cultural contributions and performances, Bennett and Vanan assert the significance of language, challenge societal norms, and preserve the rich heritage of their respective Caribbean nations. Bennett's rendition of Under the Coconut Tree and Vanan's Brokdong version of Coming Down from Fort showcase survival strategies embedded in their music. Bennett's nuanced exploration of gender dynamics in the song exposes societal expectations and underscores women's assertiveness. Meanwhile, Vanan's humorous take on covert sexual meetings at Baron Bliss Grave reveals her subversion of societal norms, providing a survival strategy for women in a judgmental society. Furthermore, language is a part of culture, and one cannot exist without the other. Language and culture form the foundation of who people are and where they come from. Bennett and Vanan's performances not only celebrate nation language but also confront the hypocrisy surrounding linguistic perceptions. Through her works like Jamaica Language, Bennett emphasized the importance of nation language in affirming cultural identity in a region where African peoples were stripped of their names, language, and history. Likewise, Vanan's A Creole Culture questions false ideologies about Creole culture, contributing to a shift in societal attitudes. Their impact extends beyond music, influencing societal perceptions and empowering marginalized voices. The legacies of these heroic women are still fresh in the social consciousness of their respective nations. However, this research endeavor has revealed that some of their work, especially in audiovisual format, is already lost to time. In closing, I cite the words of Carol Dujon, who, upon reflection about the impact of Vernon's Creole culture, said that the we language, that the what we have, Leela have the us factor. For Jamaicans, as her many accolades illustrate, Bennett also has that us factor. However, Vernon has one thing that Bennett does not, the title and recognition of a national hero. Bennett devoted her life to preserving Jamaican culture. She should be honored as a hero for those pioneering efforts to preserve her legacy.
Some of them are holla, some of them. And then at the end he says, some of them, when he's going to, at the end, you know, he generally ends with John Crow. You know, the crow. Some are John Crow. Some of them are holla, some are bad.